Welcome into Psycho Sports. I'm your host, Christian Martinelli. Another week we're on Zoom here. Last week we had a lot of fun. We talked all about the NFL draft. Today it's Cinco de Mayo, so happy Cinco de Mayo to all of our Mexican and, viewers and listeners and readers out there that might be watching, and especially our good friend Joe Farrow. You know him, Joe Farrow, give him a text. Give him a DM, talk to him. He wants to really hear from you on Cinco de Mayo today. He loves the support. And today, guys, I'm joined with a great crew. First off, I'm joined by Tyler Salk, who, if you know anything about 990 WBOB, you see this kid's ugly mug everywhere. He writes, he produces, he does shows.
That's not true. They usually don't see me. This is a rare opportunity to really want to go away from
and a sad one as well.
I know. It's unfortunate. How are you?
I'm great, man. And, also today we are joined by David Albiani, who is a friend of the station. He's, always joining your show. David, thank you so much for coming on, man. You do so much. Like, you just look at your Twitter bio. It's like, what don't you do? NBC Boston, co-host Crossing State Lines podcast, Patriots writer for Full Press, Full Press Patriots. So you really do it all, man. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. How you guys doing?
Good. Not bad. Can't complain.
Good. Yeah, we have Tyler over there celebrating Cinco de Mayo at his local Burger King.
Yep. I was able to be the first non-Burger King employee in the entire state of Rhode Island to be let into the establishment, guys. I'm going to try to keep my excitement over that to a minimum and try to have it more on the conversation. I skipped the drive-through line, though. I skipped the drive-through.
Oh, that's always good. And I didn't know that we're serving kosher burgers these days, but Burger King's always good.
I just get it without cheese, and you can pass it off as kosher-ish.
Fair enough.
It's nice they cleared out the whole restaurant for you, too.
I know. Yeah. Actually, if you notice in the background, there is an employee right behind me over my shoulder. So there's someone. I didn't break in. That's the big thing. I didn't break in. They let me in with permission.
And that might be the only Burger King that's going to pass any health inspection.
Not anymore. Not that I'm here.
Yeah.
It's one big way to get shut down. It's also a way to drive away customers.
Yes, this is for sure. And the first thing I want to talk about quickly is something that happened over the last week, and it was kind of a big deal because we see for the last, who knows how long, the NCAA takes so much advantage of these student athletes, right? They use their likeness, they use their skills, their hard work, this, that, and the other, and they profit millions and millions of dollars off them every single year. So we saw the NCAA finally take a big step in my opinion, the right direction, allowing these athletes to use their likeness, social media. They can advertise to finally make some money because these kids don't usually come from, the most wealthy backgrounds of all time. They, they get school paid for them, which is great, but at the same time, it doesn't make sense why they can't just make, $1 off of their name when they work so hard for it. So, David, I want to hear from you first, and then Tyler, you can go. Let me know what you guys think about the NCAA making this big change.
I think it was a long time coming, like you had said. I think it's certainly an important step, and I think it's one that really makes a lot of sense because the main discussion is how do we pay these athletes? How do we compensate them fairly when certain sports like football and basketball generate revenues that other sports just don't? And I think this is a good step because the sports that do drive a lot of revenue and player recognition, they'll get that money through this process, through video games or endorsements or whatever it may be, and they can still look into paying them a stipend later on. But this is a really good first step for them.
Yeah, so I think, as long as you're not making it a negotiation thing, if we look at Major League Baseball, generally speaking, it's which team is willing to give that highest price, right? If the Red Sox are willing to give $20 million and the Yankees are willing to give 22, chances are they're going to the Yankees. I don't want to see that. I'll ask you guys a quick question. Maybe you know the answer. Who is the highest paid state employee in Rhode Island? Do you know?
David Cox.
David Cox from the University of Rhode Island. state employee. We're not going to get too political right now, but it does come out of the taxpayer's pocket, right? Let's look at a school like in Kentucky. They're going to have how many big recruits for basketball? How many millions of dollars could that potentially be as it gets higher and higher? I'm not for that. But off the likeness, absolutely. I shouldn't be the only person who's able to have Burger King be my endorser and profit off of it, right? If let's say LaMelo Ball were to stay in college and Burger King were to be like, hey, LaMelo, be in our commercial. We'll give you $500,000. All for that. All for that. Video games. All for that. They're profiting off the likeness of the individual. But I don't want to see it become a bidding war, guys. I don't want to see it become too for profit. I don't want to see it become even more top heavy than it already is.
Right, and I think you're correct when you get into that, because it becomes a slippery slope when we talk about paying the players. I like they can use their likeness. I like that they can, they can get taken out to lunch, I think, without, having to be suspended for a season. Yeah, exactly, at Burger King or whatever. Like, the sanctions were insane, but, it does become a little complicated when you're like, well, should someone on the rowing team get $50,000 a year because the basketball team brought in, $70 million this year? Like, no. So it's a difficult situation to figure out. But all these old white dudes, the NCAA, are the guys that are filling their pockets, while these kids, work their ass off 365 days a year. So I think it's just a step in the right direction. And like you guys said, I think, hopefully more can be done to compensate these kids, but it's obviously a great start and something that should have happened a while ago.
Yeah, and obviously we talk about like the big ticket type of programs, right? We talk about basketball, we talk about football, baseball, we know nobody cares about that at all, but let's look at the sports where they come from the Olympics, right? Where we'll go local. Elizabeth Beisel, Olympic swimmer, we all know that. If she profited off of her likeness out of the Olympics before she went to the University of Florida, well, she wouldn't have been eligible to go to college, but to get that scholarship to swim in college. Luckily, she was able to swim afterwards and whatnot too in the Olympics, make that profit, go on Survivor, have all the controversies that she did. But let's say she didn't. Let's say she took that money and right off the bat before she was in college, wasn't eligible to swim at Florida, and that wasn't able to get a college education, wasn't able to advance herself beyond what she was at below 18 years old. Right? When we look at the smaller sports where there isn't that kind of millions and millions of dollars, they need that money, and they should be able to profit off their likeness in that limited time that they can.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that when you talk about likeness, I don't think, Tyler, I agree with what you said. No one wants this to be a bidding war, and then you see the small schools lose out, or taxpayers have to fund it or whatever it may be. But, if you do likeness, if you do video games, if you do, endorsement, like you said, a food commercial, a shoe commercial, Gatorade, whatever it may be, those players have earned that reputation, that ability to make money off themselves. This isn't like what Christian said. The rowing team, they're great athletes, but it doesn't mean that they bring in the same amount of money that the football and basketball teams do. And everyone knows that. So I think that was the first step. The likeness is big because we don't have to worry about who gets what. When we start getting into the nitty gritty and we start saying, all right, everyone gets a stipend, that's going to be more challenging, because does the 15th guy on the basketball team deserve what the first guy does? And does the best player in the rowing team deserve what someone in gymnastics or football or baseball does? They all bring different values, so that's going to be difficult. But this is a really good first step.
Yeah, and I think the thing you said that we can all agree on is we want the video games back. NCAA football, man, I hope that comes back. That was like one of the best games of all time. Anyone that ever played it, it was awesome. But, to move on from there, want to get into a conversation that's often had. Who's the GOAT? Who's the best of this sport, that sport, this generation? Have a little fun with this. So I think we'll do a little rotation here just so that we don't get all jumbled. It can go David, Tyler, then myself. We'll go sport by sport here. Give me your player. Give me, a little bit about them, why they're the GOAT. And then after we all kind of, give 30 seconds about why we think they're the GOAT, we'll talk about that a little bit, and then we'll move on to the next sport. So we're going to do, we'll start off with football. So David, who is the greatest player of all time in the sport of football?
Well, in my opinion, I think this one is probably the easiest one of them all to decide, and I think it's Tom Brady. Personally, and I know obviously people's first thought is we're biased, we're in New England. Tom's played here for 20 years. Obviously, that came to an end this offseason, but I mean, the guy is at the top or near the top in every statistical category for a passer as far as where he is now. He's won 6 Super Bowls. He's played in 9. And the two Giants ones, you can make a case where, all right, he didn't play his best football. The team didn't really either. But against Philly, I mean, the offense did its job. I mean, he had one fumble at the end of the game that, Brandon Graham got loose and knocked the ball away. But he played a near perfect game. The offense was fantastic. They were missing Brandon Cooks. I mean, he's a fantastic player, and everything he's done, he's a leader. I mean, he just does it all. He's clutch. I mean, there's nothing the guy doesn't do. I mean, I guess if we get into really deep details, he doesn't run very fast, but you don't need to. He's got great pocket mobility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, when we talk about this, right, I wouldn't say that Tom Brady's the most talented football player of all time. But when we talk about who the best football player is, we talk about winningness. Who's won more than Brady? Enough said.
Yeah, no one.
100%.
Yeah.
Regular season, postseason, whatever.
Yeah, we all agree with this one. I went Brady too, and of course, Tyler, you know this. I'm a big Brady lover. You're always kind of jeering me about it. But the fact of the matter is, when we're talking about someone that's the greatest player of all time, you can't talk about that conversation without having Tom Brady's name in there. Yes, we might be partially biased. Like maybe some people might say Jim Brown, or maybe some people will say Lawrence Taylor. But I think if you're really being objective with it, Tom Brady's the GOAT. I think he's the greatest leader. I think he's the greatest competitor. And like Tyler said, the greatest winner. It's hard to put anything against him. It's hard to knock him at all. Really, the only thing, like you said, David, were those, obviously, the Super Bowl losses. Really not – it's hard to even put those against him. There were different aspects of those games that were tough. For me, it's Tom Brady as well. We all agree there, but I have a feeling that we're going to disagree on this next one because the sport is so tough to grasp. There's so many great players in the sport, so many different eras where the game was just different, and that's the sport of basketball. So let's hear it from you first, David. Once again, who is the greatest basketball player of all time in your opinion?
Well, it's very fitting that we're talking about this now after the documentary is airing, The Last Dance on ESPN. I'm going to go with Michael Jordan, and I know a lot of people might go with LeBron James. You might hear some votes for, Wilt Chamberlain. You might hear some for, Larry Bird, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson. Down the list, you can keep going and adding players, Bill Russell. But Michael Jordan is the guy that everyone is compared to, and like LeBron James has come in and dominated through every statistical category, assists, blocks, defense, everything except really free throw shooting. He's improved every year. That's kind of been the stagnant one where he hasn't really improved it a ton. But, Michael was clutch. He came in right away and dominated, his rookie year and just really just took off every year since. He had elite athleticism. He had the hunger, the work ethic, the skill, the size, the athleticism. There was nothing he couldn't do. His efficiency rating for his career was 28, basically, which, people in the league now average about 27, I think, for top notch. I think Giannis was at somewhere around 31 this year. But it's just, he averaged, 30 points a game for whatever it was, 6 straight years. And, they won 6 titles. So, this guy he has it all.
Now, I'm going to say, though, I'm going to preview my next answer. My next answer is Babe Ruth. Why is Babe Ruth the best baseball player of all time? He's not the best hitter. He's not the best pitcher. What did he do? He did both. What does LeBron do that Jordan didn't? Played all 5 positions. Look, this is a guy, doesn't matter, offense, defense, put him 1 to 5. He does everything that you want and more. Look, am I going to give Michael Jordan the shot at the end of the game if I have both these guys on the same team? You bet your ass I'm going to. No questions asked. If I need somebody to put up 40 points in a game, who am I going to? I'm going to Jordan. When we take defense into account, when we take being able to stop the bigs into account. And look, I'm 5'5.5". I'm short. I'm going to say it. Basketball, size matters. LeBron has that, and he uses it in every sense. There's no stopping that guy. And in a one-on-one, let's go in the paint. We're taking LeBron. Let's go to the outside. I think LeBron's going to put up a better matchup on Jordan in a one-on-one matchup because of that size advantage. Jordan, better shooter. LeBron, all around, taking him.
Yeah, and those are the two guys that, as of late, people have been putting head-to-head. LeBron versus Jordan, who's better? I mean, you go on ESPN, you'll hear it every single day pretty much. I went a little different with this one. I don't know if my conviction's as strong as my other picks with this one, but this is a guy that's never really given the respect that I think he deserves. He played 20 years in the league. He won 11 championships, and that guy is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, like David mentioned earlier. And I picked Kareem Abdul-Jabbar because we're not just talking about a guy that averaged 25 points a game for his career, or 11 rebounds a game for his career, or played pretty much 75 games for all 20 years of his career. We're talking about a guy that's an 11-time all-defensive team guy, one of the best defenders of all time, a 6-time NBA champion. You see it right there, 4-time block champion, 15-time all-NBA. He was just an absolute terror on the court, and he wasn't just playing against, the small white guys of the 60s. He was really there throughout the entire 70s and the entire 80s. So he was playing in some big boy basketball. He dominated. He won so much, and I just don't think he really ever got the respect he deserved. He was an all-star literally every single year of his career. To me, it's a toss-up between those three guys, but I thought I would show Kareem Abdul-Jabbar a little bit of respect that I don't think he usually gets in this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with that. I mean, Kareem is certainly a fantastic player, and LeBron is too, and Jordan is too. I mean, really, any one of them, you'd be lucky to have them, and they're, an all-time, all-decade, all-millennial kind of talent, or millennium kind of talent. So, I mean, I think no matter what you do, I think really all of them are very good choices.
No, for sure. Where they're Hall of Famers for a reason. You don't get that denotation without being an all-time great. They're there. Some are better than others. These guys are all better than almost everybody else. Throw Kobe in there, throw Duncan in there, throw a bunch of guys in there. All three certainly belong.
Yeah, and for me, Jordan's probably going to be the consensus pick by most people. LeBron, I'm not totally ready to go there yet just because still got a lot to do in his career. But without a doubt,
making 8 straight finals wasn't enough, right?
No, I'm just saying, listen, he lost a lot of them. But we're going to move on to the next sport now because we don't have a ton of time today, and I want to hear what you guys have to say about this one. Tyler, I already know who you're picking for baseball, so you can start us off. Tell us why Babe Ruth is your greatest baseball player of all time.
Look, I mean, Christian, Dave, you probably don't know. Baseball is my number one when it comes to sports, right? That's what I'm always thinking about, always talking about. I wanted to go with somebody else, right? I see Barry Bonds' name on this list. Somebody picked Barry Bonds. You guys don't know how bad I wanted to go with Barry Bonds or Hank Aaron or Ken Griffey Jr. But what did Babe Ruth do? We see the numbers right here on the screen. Home runs, batting average, runs, RBI, steals, all great, except for steals. That's not bad, not great. But what's missing from there? The pitching. We forget about that aspect of the game because we hear, oh, Babe Ruth had 714 home runs. Dude was an animal on the mound too. How excited is everybody over Shohei Ohtani? Right? I'm incredibly excited over it. And what is it? This dude does everything. It's not, oh, he's a pitcher coming up to the plate for an automatic strikeout like every bum in the National League. Right? This is a guy who, on both sides of the ball, was dominant. You can't beat that when you factor in both aspects. He did everything. We go back to the LeBron argument. 1 to 5. There wasn't a thing he couldn't do. I'm not going to put Babe Ruth behind the plate. I'm not going to have him try to catch a Garrett Cole fastball by any means. But beyond that, I'm taking this guy. I want him on my team because he could do everything.
David, you can go.
Yeah, I mean, I think Babe Ruth is a good choice, and I think he was probably my 2 that I was going to pick. But I went in a different direction. I went Willie Mays. I think Willie Mays is vastly underrated as far as where he is as far as all-time greats. I mean, the guy could really just do it all. I mean, when people talk about great defensive outfielders, they reference the Willie Mays over-the-shoulder catch right away. That's one of the all-time great catches, right? So, I mean, you're already talking about a great defender. He stole a lot of bases. He could hit for power. He had 660 home runs from a center fielder. Like, if you saw that now, other than Mike Trout, there's really no home run hitters for center fielders. There's not a ton. They're not. They're all fast guys. They're glove guys. They have decent arms. That's pretty much it, though. Willie Mays is a guy that you'd think he's a corner outfielder. He's a third baseman, first baseman, because of all the pop. You know, he hit 302. He's a career 300 hitter, and he had over 3,000 hits, and he's a great defensive outfielder. I mean, he doesn't pitch, like Tyler said. Babe Ruth pitched, too. So, I mean, that's a step towards Babe Ruth. But, I mean, if you put Willie Mays at the plate, he's just as good as Babe Ruth, in my opinion, even though Babe Ruth was a better average hitter, and obviously hit more home runs. But I just think overall, yeah.
Yeah, and again, Tyler going with Babe Ruth, it's hard to dispute it. For me, I was leaning towards Babe Ruth, but then I was just like, you know, he played in the 10s and the 20s. You know, the play just wasn't as good then. You put Barry Bonds in that type of environment, which isn't a fair conversation at all. But Barry Bonds hits 3,000 home runs in his career. And that's why I chose Barry Bonds, because he was just the type of guy, when he stepped up to the plate every single time, you thought he was going to hit a home run. He put the fear into the opposing team, into the opposing fans. Most home runs of all time, 762. He's not just a great home run hitter. We're talking about a guy that's an 8-time Gold Glover, 12-time Silver Slugger, 14-time All-Star, 7-time MVP. He was unbelievable. The only mark against him is the steroids. And, of course, that's kind of a hard thing to argue, you know, with, you know, because he cheated. Everyone knows he cheated. And the fact of the matter is he didn't need to cheat because he was that great. But
well, if we go to Willie Mays, too, where I may put those guys into the Hall of Fame, Willie Mays used greenies, right? He used performance-enhancing drugs. Babe Ruth, I think he did cocaine. I think that might have improved his personal life a little bit. I don't think it improved his game at all.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I am somebody. I put Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame. I'm not in the camp and take Willie Mays out, but of our three guys, I picked the only cleanish player.
Yeah, cleanish. There's a reason he died at 53, Tyler. Let's just put it that way.
Cancer. Christian cancer.
Yeah. He lived a good lifestyle. But Barry Bonds, for me, he's the guy. If I said one player is just the best all around, I'd have to go with him. So that's why I took him. And
I think they'd only Burger King.
Right. All right. So now we're gonna go into a sport that I wouldn't call us exactly experts in, but we've all watched hockey. I think we all enjoy a good game of at least playoff hockey. And so, David, for me, who's the best hockey player of all time?
For this one, I think it's pretty easy. It's Wayne Gretzky.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this guy, I mean, you can see it right here on the page. His nickname is the Great One, first of all. But, I mean,
name.
Yeah. I mean, he's 9-time Hart Trophy, which is MVP, 15-time All-Star, 4-time Cup winner. I mean, he's an absolute just crazy man on the ice. He can score from anywhere on the ice. He's sort of like Ovechkin now, except he's even better than Ovechkin. Yeah. Like, Ovechkin puts the fear of God into people when he touches the puck. You see Chara and you see Brandon Carlo run at him immediately and everyone shift the defense, and you have Bergeron watching him. That is like what Wayne Gretzky was at all times, and he still scored almost 900 goals. I mean, this guy is absolutely insane. He scored a goal in basically every other game in his career. I mean, that's an insane stat right there. But overall, I mean, I think for hockey, it's tougher, too, to judge skaters, defensemen, and goalies as far as who's an all-time great. Just like Bobby Orr was great, but he's a little bit of a different player. So it's tough to really compare them, whereas baseball and basketball and football, I think it's a little bit easier. But I definitely think Gretzky is the greatest.
Yeah, hands down, Wayne Gretzky. Dave hit everything nail on the head. What can you take away from this guy? Dave just said it himself. 9 MVPs? Who else has done that? Right? Like, I see from the tabs open, we have Olympics coming up soon. If we're talking, oh, this guy won 9 gold medals. Holy crap, this guy won 9 gold medals. Mm-hmm. We're talking about something completely different here. We're talking about something potentially harder. Not winning an MVP once, but 9 times versus winning 9 gold medals. Like, it's tough to even put in words.
It is. And just like you guys, I hesitated for a second when I made this pick. I said, for years, my dad's been telling me, no, I promise Bobby Orr is the greatest player ever, because, he grew up watching him, obviously, as a Boston Bruin. But for me, it's got to be Wayne Gretzky. He just was unbelievable on the ice. He averaged more than a point a game. You look at that right there, 1,963 assists in 1,487 games. It's just insane. He was averaging close to 2 points a game for his entire career. He's the great one, like you said. Unbelievable. Can't take anything away from him. Make a case for Bobby Orr, sure. Like, he was an amazing player. Mario Lemieux, sure. Sidney Crosby, he's starting to, build up a case as well. But until someone really does something insane and puts together a career that makes you just lose your mind, it's going to be Wayne Gretzky for a long time, in my opinion. And now we get into something that I thought was pretty intriguing. I could have done soccer. I could have done, some other sport, but I thought the Olympics, because everyone loves to watch the Olympics when they come around. And, they're just filled with the greatest athletes in the world. So for you guys, who is the greatest Olympian of all time? There's a lot of them, a lot of great winners, but David, I want to hear who you got as your number one guy.
I like you said, I think there's a lot of great ones out there that could be considered. And I think certainly anyone that's sort of been watching the Olympics mainly for the last 20 or so years, you really have two decisions. You have Usain Bolt and you have Michael Phelps, because those are the two guys that, you watch it and you flip it on and you're thinking, all right, these are the people I want to watch. And actually, I shouldn't even say that. You should throw Gabby Douglas in there too, because I think she is certainly one of the top Olympians of all time. But I went with Michael Phelps because I remember watching him swim, and there was every race. It was like, if he wasn't leading by a lot in the last, stretch of the race, it was like, oh my God, is he hurt? Is there something wrong with him? He was so dominant at his craft. He basically would not train for a lot of the time, super hard. And like the last year or so, he'd be like, all right, I want to go back and do the Olympics. I want to do the Olympics thing. And he just trained. And then all of a sudden, he'd come home with 7 gold medals or 6 gold medals. This guy is an absolute all-time athlete. Not even just Olympic athlete, just athlete in general. There's very few things this guy couldn't do.
Yeah, and Dave hit it exactly. It's between two guys, especially for people our age. It's Michael Phelps or it's Usain Bolt, right? You had good depth behind them on each of their rosters. Phelps, of course, had Ryan Lochte. If you know a second swimmer, that says something. Usain Bolt had Johan Blake behind him. If you know a second sprinter and a Jamaican foreign sprinter at that, that's something, right? These were guys coming from great programs, but beyond that, they just stood out. They always won. They broke the world records. Throw a Gabby Douglas in there, throw a Ali Raisman in there, the athletes who really come back multiple years. Honestly, throw a LeBron in there, throw a Kobe in there. When you're talking about somebody who every 4 years just had that kind of power to their name, when you didn't hear about them for the other 3 years, it's between the two guys, and I'm going with the guy who won. They both won time and time again, but I'm going with the guy who really won time and time again, and that's why he has a record.
Yeah. And like you guys said, it was between two guys. I was stuck on Phelps, honestly. But then I just kind of looked at Usain Bolt's track record. The guy never lost a race in his entire Olympic career.
He got DQ'd.
He got DQ'd after the fact, that is. He had 9 gold medals. Now it's been taken down to 8, but he never lost a race. It was thanks to his teammate that happened. But I think Usain Bolt, he broke every speed record there is. He was just the greatest at what he did. He wasn't long distance. I don't think he said he never ran a mile in his life. Simple enough. He sprinted the fastest. He was the fastest man on earth. Never lost a race in the Olympics. So for me, it's hard to put anyone above him. You guys say Michael Phelps. Don't argue at all. Love Michael Phelps. I just remember how electric those games were when he went 8 for 8 with gold medals. It was insane. that like had America lighting up. I'll always remember. But guys, thank you so much. We're actually overtime now. So guys, the GOATs, I think we did a pretty good job. Nothing too outlandish, nothing too ridiculous came out of our mouths, I don't think. So that's always a win. But yeah, I think all you guys made fair points today. And I appreciate you guys for coming on. David, Albiani, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. Love to have you on another time. Like, you're one of the best. And everyone, please go follow him at David_Albiani, as you see on the screen right now. Tyler Salk, my man. I'm sure I'll be talking to you throughout the week. Thank you so much. Have a great show. Anyone wants to listen to Tyler's shows, you can go into the past cast. He's doing the Tyler Salk show as well as the Wild Side tonight. So you want to go into the past cast and listen to those. You can hear those. And our great producer, Michael Sandoval, thank you so much for being on top of everything and sharing all those screens, making the show look great. I really appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening to Psycho Sports this week, and take care.